I think after the film came out, I had heard some things and some comments from the Catholic Church, but really the story was based on this idea of presenting dogma and the evils of dogma. And so once it was kind of brought out in the press, there was a little help from the press to kind of squash any of that. But the film really wasn't made to create a political statement or a religious statement. It was made really more targeted commercially toward an age group, with the hopes that maybe that age group would be aware of thinking a little more strongly and making choices a little bit more deeply than just following a group, the ideas of dogma. So, no, it really wasn't, producers really care about the money end of things more than they care sometimes about. And if it was a good argument, maybe that was good for box office.
Did you enjoy making the film?
Yeah, we had a great time. It was exhausting. It was a film, it was my first film, feature film. I'd been making commercials up until that point, so this was a big change and a quick thing to do. We took it on, my business partner and I took it on as a commercial. So literally, we spoke with the production company and the financing company on a Thursday. I'll be honest, we drank 2 beers with them. They told us what they wanted. We went downstairs, we thought about it, and Monday we left for Iowa. And then we put the thing together in about 3 weeks and got people that we worked with in television commercials at the time to be our crew, hired a few other people, and so we all went out and collectively worked very, very hard in a very short period of time, way before my daughter just made fun of us, saying, where's the CGI in this? This is way before any kind of computer-generated images where fire was kind of hand-drawn and things like that. So it was lots of fun,
Yeah,
but it was very, very hard.
She was even saying that she the special effects has come a long way since.
More than a long way.
Yeah.
We can all agree to
What kind
that.
of budget did you have on this?
This was a very, very small budget. And the film was really sold on the basis of Stephen King's original script, which I understand was originally sold to Hal Roach, the man who ran or invented The Little Rascals, for his benefit, so that he could get back into making films with children. And when that didn't work, other people looked at it for business opportunities, one of which was the group that finally financed it. And they had a version of the script written with an evil twist to it, taking advantage of what it could be, making the familiar strange, that kind of idea. And so a lot of money, which was originally tagged for the budget, I'd say over half, was given to the partners who had interest in the film. So we literally had about $800,000 in 1983 to make the film. Not much. Especially when we left Los Angeles, which was the center of making films, and then went out the entire company for 2-3 months into Iowa, planning and shooting and finishing. So it was a stretch. Therefore, the effects are pretty nice.
Do children in any, because some of them are pretty young, in any sort of horror film, do they ever leave it traumatized? Like,
Well, that's the whole purpose of doing this, is to, I mean, I meet children today, and they say, I saw the film, and I go, oh, who's your psychologist? That's the whole concept of what we do. The young woman that was in this film was guided and supervised very carefully by her parents. She knew nothing of the story. She only knew that which she had to perform. The same with the young man, Robbie Kiger. And the laws of working with children protect them very strongly. There are people who watch over what they do constantly through the day. We work with children based on their age for limited periods of time. So on this film, there are 2 sets of twins for each child, because at that age group, the lead children, could only work about 2 hours, I think tops 4 hours of the day. The rest of us, the adults, could work 10, 12, on this film, sometimes 15 hours a day. So they're protected, they're supervised, there's a lot of guidance.
So they
And
don't
hopefully you
associate
don't do it.
the horror part. They don't really see much of that.
Well,
they just kind of have a...
no. Film is made in segments, and so you don't really see the collective, you don't see the finished assembly at any particular time. You're only working on that one little unit that glues together in scene work, and so you really don't understand what it is. And again, there are so many layers to the film, with the sound and the picture being organized in certain ways, and then today with special effects, I don't think actors have a full understanding of exactly how they will appear in the final result. and what they contribute is a very small part, really, today. It's so thick.
Thank you.
There are a couple of other people here who can answer a tremendous amount of questions beyond this film. I'm not going to talk to you, films. But I'd like to introduce them before two colleagues. One of the other gentlemen that's sharing the spotlight this weekend is Matthew, whose special effects background and what he does for a living in hair and makeup and special effects is phenomenal. He has an Academy Award in the areas of this film. And George Parra is a good friend of mine who is a producer par excellence, who's produced a number of fantastic films, many of which have been nominated for Best Picture Academy Award. Last year it was American Hustle and Nebraska. He did both of those films. They can answer questions. I'm happy to pass the microphone to them. They have nothing to do with this film, but their expertise is phenomenal. And they'll fill you in much more deeply than I can in terms of what we did, gosh, when we were kids. When we made this film.
So no car chase scene.
Yeah, unfortunately, this car, we didn't get back to real movie making, car chase scenes. Terry and I worked together, and I'm always an advocate for the car chase and the good finish, and he likes those stories that are mushy about women who wear nice hats. If you have questions for either of these two gentlemen, please, about the whole prospect, or the whole industry, anything that goes on, I'm sure they can.
Well, I have a question, particularly for your company.
George.
I like this film because it has a sense of suspense as opposed to gore. I mean, there are a lot of films that gross me out, but I'm a nerd by profession, so they don't scare me, they're just gross. Is there, then when they saw this other kind of crazy stuff, so are you saying, gee, show me a good script that has suspense as opposed to gore?
Well, I'm personally not a big horror fan, personally, but no, suspense and thrillers are much more exciting to me, personally. So yeah, I prefer this, very much so. I'm not a big slasher fan at all. She's out cold, you know.
But let me add something. George also has made Terminator 1, Terminator 2, Fast and Furious, and Any Given Sunday. His background is strong in the action genre, in the things that really matter when it comes to commercial cinema. So there is a taste level, and I think George would be a strong advocate for what is gory and unnecessary and what is really unethical in terms of how humans behave one to the other. And then there is the commercial, viable, I'd like to see something that I've never seen before, which is along the lines of the kind of work that he's been involved in, very, very successfully.
Yes, are you working with Alexander Payne on anything else?
He's writing, he's
writing.
in his lab of writing up in upstate New York. Takes a year or two, so yeah, he is writing right now. Matthew, anything you want to add?
It's all good.
So when you saw the effects in this,
Right.
how could you today make those effects like on Salem, which is the show he's doing right now, and American Horror Story, how can you make those effects, these effects stand out to the level that you would?
Well, I think they were done really well. I mean, all the, no, it were for that time, because I was in film at that time, and we were doing all the low budget stuff, doing reverse photography and all that stuff, and doing the best we could with what we had. You know, and it's just a matter of, you know, what techniques we have today to work with. Like, do everything practical as much as we can in makeup effects, and then enhance it with visual effects. That's always the best. Sometimes they don't go with that because production wants to go the easy and the cheapest route, which is using visual effects, and not do it. But, you know, it's a lost art, really.
This was, this is way before any computer-generated imagery or framework or anything.
And we had to do everything in camera.
Absolutely.
And there was no touching it up at all, so it had to be, you know, 1, 2 takes, and that was it. You know, do it as an insert. But
And it's science.
yeah,
It's real science.
absolutely.
Some of the things that George has done were huge action stunts that happened. I watched him blow up a building in Los Angeles. It's all very planned.
Mhm.
You know when these stuff's gonna land. The accelerator gag you did for Demolition Man, the helicopter, and the man fell out of that, jumped out of the helicopter on the wire, helicopter's moving up and down, the man landed perfectly. It's all science. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
So, computers make the signs go away.
Yeah.
There's a question about you, and then we'll ask your question.
Well, I was gonna ask you a question, is that all right?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, these are the experts.
Well, I'm gonna ask related to the film.
I'm an expert.
Okay.
I'll take the one.
I was just gonna ask about locations, actually, about, was this town very low population already, or did you ask people to clear out? How did you get it so empty?
So, actually, it's just the magic of cinema. I'm proud of that. Those are about 4 different towns. And we were able to use 4 different towns and 4 different parts of those towns with the cooperation of the government of those towns. They are literally intersections of small towns outside of Sioux City, Iowa. So we would talk about this street at this time of the day and asking all the citizens not to be there or to stand behind the camera and be with us. And then they gave us full use of everything. It was really quite powerful because I could say, get rid of all those people, and they would leave, and it was really nice. You don't get that chance very often to be that strong. But through certain things in cinema called cutting pieces, you'll see something, an object in the corner of the frame that will appear in the next joined frame to that particular shot, and it will make you think that those 2 shots are from very similar vantage points. That object appearing twice, the cutting piece kind of duplicates the location, and it's a very quick cinema trick, old school cinema trick. So that's what it was. It was just a matter of placing certain things in places to make the audience think there's continuity of location. We lived in Sioux City, Iowa for the duration of the making of the film, and would travel up to 40 minutes from Sioux City to various locations kind of around the area. That's how it worked. Anything
Back to your company. Are there key things that you would say, like, gee, we want to go make films in Oklahoma because they X, Y, Z, or if they only would X, Y, Z, we would make our film there?
It's funny because we were talking about it before dinner or something like that. It's generally about a location, like he said, Sioux City. If there was a location here or a cornfield or whatever the look is, if you have a crew base, which is what's probably lacking in the area, but if you have a crew base and a tax incentive like you guys have, very much so. It's a great place to shoot, and with people like Fritz being around to encourage it. It's really about a look and a location.
Yeah. And I hope that you guys in here get a better idea that Oklahoma is kind of diverse between Little Sahara and Arkansas and Plains, and there's probably more variety visually than most people think in Oklahoma.
I'm sure there is, and I believe you, but I don't know it personally because this is my first day today. But with the help of Fritz, thank you, with the help of Fritz, and I will get to know it better. But I believe it. I've worked a lot in Nebraska. I've made three films up in the Omaha area, which is 2 states north of here. And it's similar looking, but yet different looking. So I understand what you're saying, sort of. But I don't know it well enough to be specific about it.
Well,
Something else that's really neat, Daniel, we were talking about this at dinner tonight because we were fortunate to spend some time to catch up. 8 years he hasn't made a film in Los Angeles. For the past 8 years. And we were talking about the downturn in the industry activity in Los Angeles and Hollywood, and how it is now not in Los Angeles. It's across the country. It's in cities like Shreveport, Louisiana. We talked about the South being the new Hollywood. And California's not it. It's all over. And it's where you find resources like these locations and crew and people like yourself, where there are opportunities financially. We don't have to run to the studio building just because it's Warner Brothers. It's a nice tour.
cool. Good pitch. I'm ready.
All right. What else can we answer for anyone?
How much did you spend on that fire? Yeah.
Here's how the fire worked. We bought the My daughter thinks it's pretty funny because she's making fun of it. The fire was a bit of a mistake. You see, we bought the cornfield to make the fire, which was really the climax, obviously, of the film, and therefore, production-wise, very important. You had to have some exciting end to the film. And gas bombs were used, and you use gas bombs. They're basically trash bags filled with gas, placed in the ground, maybe 5 feet down, which becomes the mortar shell or the mortar tube for this shell of gasoline. And then you detonate that. And they shoot fireballs depending on how high you want it to go, how much gas is in it. It's very regulated, and they're quite safe. The idea was we put the cameras in place, targeted, framed, made everything perfect, and then literally screwed the cameras so you couldn't move them. The idea being we would explode the gas bombs 2 or 3 times and then layer the film one on top of each other to make a spectacularly large impression on the audience. Massive 50-story fireball. It was very cold, and it wasn't a very accommodating weather, and the men using or placing the gas bomb stop brandy was a good way to keep themselves warm. So they kind of screwed up, and they changed the position of the cameras after the first gas bomb went off, and then they were too drunk to load the second gas bombs, and so it got to be kind of a problem because it was toward the end of our schedule, because we couldn't burn the field at the beginning of making the film, we had to burn the field at the end of making the film. So there we were with kind of a half-burned field and half explosion and everything else. So we got the bright idea after the fact to ask a man who had done some special effects on Star Wars to help us finish. But he wasn't quite paid all the way, so he didn't quite finish all the fire all the way. So we have this wonderful artifact of special effects, which positions this film in a unique period of filmmaking history. It's not about the fire, it's about the emotion.
I was going to ask, Matthew, you're from Oklahoma, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Tell us a little bit about your journey from Oklahoma to where you are now.
Well, I moved out there in 1977 and started my career at Joe Velasco Makeup Center, going to the school and learning prosthetics and makeup, regular makeup. Then I started working at CBS and NBC, just doing beauty makeup, and left and started doing makeup effects on everything, because that's what I wanted to do. Started department heading shows like Navy SEALs and War Party, just low budget things. And before that, it was Kindred and the Dorm That Drip Blood, and just anything to do my profession that I love to do. And then it just started growing, and I did Edward Scissorhands. That got me into the union. But before that was with William Friedkin on The Guardian. So that was by fire with William Friedkin. You know, have to work with him. You know, he was great though. We worked together. And then just working my way up the ladder. You know, working with Oliver Stone on Heaven and Earth and Natural Born Killers, and killing myself on that, and you know, going up and just doing what I love, you know, and just opening my own shop and getting 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, which gives me more latitude to be creative. So that's how I started. Thank you.
Matthew, I know you got a huge variety of filmography. Is there any particular movie that you're like especially proud of?
Really proud of Albert Nobbs. It was made for $8 million, and it was a labor of love for us. You know, for me especially, with Glenn and Janet McTeer, turning them into men and keeping it subtle and shooting it, you know, close-ups of the makeups and trying to keep the prosthetics looking like the skin instead of just making the whole face up. And that was a real challenge, and today that's what we have to do with HD and all of the really tight close-ups they do. We just have to really watch and hone our skills with makeup and keep as little makeup on the face as we can and try to make the piece up to look like the skin instead of vice versa. And I love doing that, and I love doing Salem now in Shreveport, Louisiana. We're doing WGN. Is its first outing with original programming. And my first interview with them was, we want to do practical effects and then enhance them with visual effects. I said, I'm on board. And that's what we do. And then they enhance them with visual effects. And it's just a grueling schedule because it's 7 days for each episode. And sometimes we'll go back a day for pickups, but it's really fast, thinking on your feet. And that's where my 36 years in the business comes into it, is just pulling from all those things, learning from Jack Pierce and Lon Chaney, using those old techniques and with new techniques and just pulling it out of your hat. Thanks.
How did you get started, George?
I went to San Diego State University Film School and got a job as a PA attorney. That's how I clawed my way up with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know you had any business, so it is possible to do it.
It's very possible. It just takes hard work and good performance. And once you do well on something, people say, get that person because they did a great job, and you're referred and you keep doing more and bigger and different things. And PA to executive producer, that's your line. Noodler in special hair and makeup with now Glenn Close and huge TV credits. It's unbelievable. It goes fast.
It does.
It does. It does. It goes really fast. There are stories of career advancements that happen overnight, and then there's stories of masters like these gentlemen who take a number of years to learn how to do it properly and then succeed at a very, very high level. But there are people who just blossom, and you've seen them, and it happens. But these guys stay around. George was telling me two people that taught him came out of Tulsa.
Doug Claiborne and Mark Bedler on Tulsa.
Interesting. There's a hotbed of cool things here. Daniel Adams is here. How can you go wrong?
Thank you. You're my Yoda. You're pretty big Yoda, so yeah. Thank you.
I had to ask, Children of the Court being your first movie, I mean, Stephen King is a very big author. I mean, was it stressful or exciting to do a story like that in your first film?
Well, that's a very good question because I never really thought about his prestige and his place in literature in the United States, particularly in commercial world literature, pop literature kind of. I was so excited not to be making television commercials, to do what I wanted to do. I had worked through television commercials in a variety of areas, and I was really trained as a cinematographer. And that's what I did when I made commercials. I made soup look nice. I had won awards for making pens, writing pens look quite pretty. And so here was a chance to make a narrative, full-length feature film with people who I had worked with in commercials who had transitioned into feature film and said, I'd like to work with people I knew, so let's call Fritz and see if he'd like to do this. He's very clever with little gadgety things and so forth. So Stephen King was kind of the least item in my thinking. It was more about, wow, this is a feature film, we'll be able to tell a story. How can we do this? How can we make this unique? Well, let's make something that looks like a low-budget, terrible horror movie. And I mean that in terms of honoring the genre, because we didn't have a lot of money, so we had to kind of pay tribute to those films that fit into this kind of category and stress certain things to make it resemble those films.
And the original short story is only a few pages long. Like, how difficult was it to try to expand it? And then it was it's a little bit different than the short story. Did you have anything to do with the writing process?
The original short story novella it was a little longer than a short story. Like I said, it was originally from an adaptation of a script by Stephen King and then combined with a novella. But I recall going with the producer to his house one day and talking about the story with others. And the producer looking at the film, and George will appreciate this, looking at the script for, that will cost a lot of money, let's not do that. And he had these gigantic cloth scissors, you know how they're really big? And he would just cut the page and then take tape and pull up the next thing. Okay, we'll go from this scene to this, that's done. And that's how he wrote the script. It was really done from a perspective of cost more than it was from other things. And then when we got out there, we found out, boy, we've made some mistakes and some good things happen.
I got one more question. Like, Isaac and Malachi are two of the creepiest kids I've ever seen on film. Like, how did the casting go about those two characters? Where do you get those, really creepy?
Well, we were very fortunate to work with a woman by the name of Linda Francis, now deceased, and a gentleman named Jeff Greenberg. I don't know if you know him. He did all the work and still does all the work on shows like Frasier and Cheers and so forth. He's quite a Hollywood casting guy. And they had a lot of input into the cast. They found these kids, the leads, and they brought them in. The young man who played Isaac actually was about 21 years old or 22, and he had just finished Michigan State, I believe. And he had a growing disorder or something along those lines. Daniel probably knows what it is. And it kept him in a shorter stature, so he was interesting. And the other young man with the long red hair played Malachi. That was the way he was. And he just came in with a certain attitude and vibe of malevolence and violence. And he carried with him a large knife that he scared Jeff Greenberg with when we were doing the casting. And we thought, well, he'll be fun. So it's really fascinating. Yeah, he did that, and he did a few other burbs and colors. He's worked a lot. He's carried on. And he's a good guy. He teaches acting, I think, in Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah.
He gave me nightmares as a kid. I seen a kid with red hair, and I think it's Malachi.
And that'll do it.
Are there any final questions? All right, let's give our Green Film Literature a round of applause. Thank you guys very much for answering our questions.